In a game that the Houston Rockets were punting anyways, they were able to at least pick up some moral victories in their loss against the Oklahoma City Thunder. Reed Sheppard with easily his best game of his NBA career, a breakout performance from him, Cam Whitmore's defense, N'Faly Dante making a name for himself, and so much more. It's all coming up right here at Locked On Rockets.
This is Mission Control, Houston.
Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
What's up and welcome to another edition of Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. As always, I'm your host, Jackson Gatlin, native Houstonian and credentialed media member. I'm also the host of Locked On NBA Thursdays. Be sure to follow along wherever you listen to your podcast or on YouTube. Just search Locked On Rockets, where the best way you can help us grow our show is to listen every single day on a podcast platform of your choosing. Like, comment, and subscribe on YouTube. Also subscribe to our daily Locked On Rockets newsletter. Would sincerely appreciate all of that support. And as always, thank you so much for making Locked On Rockets part of your day every single day, whether it's on your way to work, on your lunch break, in the gym. Thank you so much for being an everydayer. The Rockets fall to the Oklahoma City Thunder 137-128 in a game that we fully expected them to lose going in, with the injury report including all four starters not named Jalen Green, no Fred VanVleet, no Dillon Brooks, no Ime Thompson, no Alperen Sengun, no Tari Eason, no Steven Adams. This was a game where like half the Rockets roster was listed as out because they were very obviously punting on the first night of a back-to-back. Monday night, OKC Thunder, Tuesday night, Indiana Pacers. Obviously, it's the buzzsaw of the OKC Thunder. You want to give yourself the best chance to win at least one of those two games, so they gave up on playing the Thunder. But the guys that were suited and booted and ready to go did not give up and actually gave the Thunder hell. Look, this is, moral victories can only give you so much in the NBA landscape, but I really believe that this is the kind of game that you walk away from if you're a Houston Rockets fan and you feel really good about the performances and the effort level on display and the quality of basketball being played by so many of these guys who have been buried at the end of the bench or two-way guys, G League guys, and a lot of these guys showcase some really serious talent in this game. And I want to get into some of the game specifics and what happened and maybe some of what went wrong and maybe even if Ime Udoka waved the white flag a little too early in this game, because it really did feel like this was a winnable basketball game for this Houston Rockets team, despite missing so many key contributors up and down the roster. But the most important takeaway from this game, bar none, is holy crap, welcome to the NBA, Reed Sheppard. This was an absolute breakout performance for Reed. Easily his best game as a pro, his first career start, career high, 25 points, 10 of 17 shooting, 3 of 7 from downtown, went 2 of 2 at the charity stripe, had a couple rebounds, had 5 assists, 2 steals, a block shot in there, and well, not a block, but one of those, patented Fred VanVleet strips on the way to the basket. Did have 3 turnovers, but obviously just played a really, really strong game across the board. And the biggest thing for Reed in this game, it felt like his comfort level was night and day different compared to how it's been previously in different games throughout his NBA career up to this point. We've talked about it a lot with Reed this season in the early going where he was kind of getting mixed in and still getting some rotation minutes. And then when he eventually got phased out of the rotation and then the spot little moments where we've seen him since then, it feels like confidence has been a big issue for Reed, where he hasn't been confident enough to go out there and hunt his shot, really look for, his own way to make an imprint on the game, almost going out there, not playing passively. That's not the right way to describe Reed's game up to this point, but more so going out there and thinking too much about making the right pass, the right read, wanting to share the ball, wanting to, distribute to the right person, and worried more so about getting other guys involved in the offense or making sure he's getting the passes to who they need to go to, rather than just, hey, I was drafted number 3 overall. I was one of the best college shooters of all time. I should absolutely be out there hunting my own shot. And then it did get better for a stretch there, right? Where he was hunting his own shot and he couldn't get the looks to fall. This is what happens when Reed Sheppard gets those shots to fall, shots that he's more than capable of making. And they were talking about it on the Rockets broadcast. Shout out to Ackerman, shout out to Hollins. Reed was showing a little bag work. Like he had a little bit of wiggle to his game. And again, he just looked so much more fluid and confident in this one than he ever has before in his career. He had 11 points by halftime. He didn't score at all in the third quarter, unfortunately, and that was where the game looked like it started to get away from the Rockets. OKC won that quarter 39-27, and a big part of why they won that quarter, I feel like, is because Reed wasn't as actively looking for a shot as he was earlier in the game. But then fourth quarter comes around, and Rockets made a pretty big run at the top of the fourth quarter to cut the lead back and get the game into a manageable state. More on that in just a moment. But Reed had 14 of his 25 points in that fourth quarter. He was hitting pull-up jumpers. He was hitting pull-up middies. He had his own version of the little flamingo shot, driving in, dipped a shoulder into his defender, and then elevated off one leg and knocked down the midi. He was getting it done in a variety of ways. He had one drive where he got to the basket and went with like a little bit of like a hezzy, and then pulled the ball back and then went back in with the left hand on the right side of the basket, just a little scoop and score around the defender. He was free. This was easily the most impressed that I've been with Reed as a pro player. He had easily one of the best sequences of the game, though, was when Reed drove to the right baseline. This happened in the first half. He was driving to the right baseline. He got in the air, and he turned the ball over. He was looking for a corner pass to Jabari Smith Jr. J-Dub intercepted the pass, got the steal, drove the length of the court, and dished it to Kenrich Williams. Then Jabari Smith Jr. had a chase down block on Kenrich Williams. Maybe not a chase down block, but like he blocked Kenrich Williams from behind, saving that defensive lapse, that turnover, or I guess saving that offensive lapse, that turnover, I should say. And then Rockets get in transition. Aaron Holiday kicks it ahead to Reed Sheppard, who drains a wide open three-pointer in transition. That put the Rockets up 42-33 early in this game. Again, it was back in about it was in the early second quarter. Rockets went on a big run there. And there were a lot of sequences, a lot of moments like that where you could see Reed being aggressive, looking for his shot, really looking to take it to the Thunder rather than playing that kind of passive style of basketball that we've seen out of him a lot this season. And hopefully this isn't just, a flash in the pan success. Hopefully maybe there's something that's finally clicked for Reed Sheppard here. Ime Udoka talked about it a little bit post-game, that there are some really positive takeaways that you can get from this one. Reed's performance, obviously. I think Cam Whitmore's defense is another one we'll talk about here in just a moment. The really strong performance from N'Faly Dante down low in the absence of Alperen, Sengun, and Steven Adams. So, N'Faly Dante played better than Jock Landale did in this game. Really showcasing what he's been working on in the G League and why the Rockets were so internally high on him earlier this year and why they signed him to a two-way deal, right? He felt like you could feel his defensive presence in this game in and around the rim. Now, it wasn't all sunshine and roses for Reed in this one. There were definitely a lot of moments, especially early in the game. SGA with a 20-point first quarter, a lot of moments where Reed was getting matched up on SGA on the perimeter, and SGA too long, too big, too fast, too strong, too much of an elite scorer for Reed Sheppard to be able to handle. But that's the case for most NBA players. But there were a lot of moments in this game where Reed was getting absolutely worked over defensively by SGA. In fact, it felt like SGA was kind of hunting Reed defensively at times, although there were plenty of times where the Rockets willingly had Reed Sheppard matching up with SGA on the perimeter. And some of that was by necessity because they didn't really have any other players that could have, I guess, taken that task up and down the Rockets roster. There were a lot of stretches where SGA was being guarded by Reed Sheppard or Aaron Holiday, and those are not ideal defenders, guys that are, 6 feet tall, 6'2", maybe guarding a 6'5", 6'6" SGA with all his craft, all his shiftiness when he's trying to get to the basket. It's a recipe asking for disaster, and SGA went off for 51 points on 18 of 30 shooting. So, maybe some shortcomings on the defensive side of the ball, but at least offensively, best game of Reed Sheppard's career, bar none. Still had some good defensive possessions when he was matched up against players that were maybe more his speed and not literally the best offensive player in the NBA to date, or at least not to date, this season, I should say. Look, it was a lot to be happy for, a lot to be proud of for Reed Sheppard in this game, and hopefully this is kind of the game that breaks the seal for Reed going forward, where maybe this is something that he can capitalize on going forward, and maybe we see Ime Udoka give him a couple more cracks at joining the rotation. And if Reed can play like this consistent, now we're not talking 25 points a game, but if he can play with this level of confidence and this level of effectiveness, especially on the offensive end of the court, I don't see any reason why Reed shouldn't take over that rotation spot from Aaron Holiday moving forward. Coming up, I want to talk about some of the other key contributors from this Rockets game. Cam Whitmore matching his career high with 27 points, as well as his defensive approach to Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. N'Faly Dante making a name for himself. Did the Rockets give up in this game too soon? We're going to get to all of that and so much more here in just one moment. First, today's episode is brought to you by DoorDash. NBA fans, get ready. They swoosh, you save. Thanks to Dash Pass, every time a player drops 50 or more points in a game, you score a huge deal the very next day. And hey, unfortunately for the Rockets, but it happened. SGA, 51 points against your Houston Rockets, which means you can take advantage of this awesome offer from DoorDash. It's really simple. When any player scores 50 or more in a game during the 24-25 NBA regular season, Dash Pass members get 50% off an order, up to $10 off the next day from noon until midnight. That means if you're listening to this podcast Tuesday afternoon, you're at lunch, you get home from work and you're tired, you don't feel like cooking dinner, open up DoorDash, hit an order, you get 50% off, up to $10 off. There's so many different ways you can take advantage of this offer. Order yourself some DoorDash for the Rockets-Pacers game. Do that. Sign up for Dash Pass and be ready to save. When any player scores 50 or more in a game, Dash Pass members get 50% off an order the very next day, up to $10 off. Just use promo code NBA50 from noon until midnight. Again, from noon until midnight. After a 50-point game on eligible orders at participating merchants, must have an active Dash Pass account. Terms apply. Visit DoorDash to learn more. And continuing on here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. I want to talk a little bit about the flow of this game, actually, because this game felt, against all odds, this game felt very winnable by the Rockets. And look, this was a 1-point game at halftime. OKC led by 1, and they dominated that third quarter, unfortunately. SGA had 28 at the half. He had 23 in the second half. And the Rockets really didn't have an answer up and down their roster for OKC. And a big part of that is you're missing so many of your key defenders, guys that you would normally throw a lot of size and length and strength at SGA to slow him down, right? Guys like Ime Thompson or Tari Eason or Dillon Brooks. They didn't have the usual cadre of defenders to try and throw out there to slow him down. One thing that we did see the Rockets utilize some, and it actually worked a little bit in spots, was some zone defense, which we really haven't seen from the Rockets much, if at all, this year, outside of, throwing out the occasional zone to stymie an opposing defense outside of, or coming out of a timeout, which always, opposing coaches love doing that, right? You come out of a timeout, coach has a play drawn up, and then you throw out a zone defense and it just blows up the entire action. But we saw Ime go with zone for stretches of this game. And maybe it's something that he revisits in future games to slow down opposing offenses or slowing down a star player or two. It wasn't executed perfectly. There were definitely some moments where Rockets throw out a zone and then they give up a wide open 3 to an elite shooter like J-Dub or whoever else, and you're just kind of like, ugh, okay. But it was nice to see Ime kind of changing some things up and seeing what he could maybe go to in future games. And it did have some moments of some success, namely in getting the ball out of SGA's hands and forcing another player to get a shot up or to try and beat you when SGA looked as unguardable as he was in this game. But again, Thunder won that third quarter 39-27. That fourth quarter, though, Rockets went on a pretty significant run at the top of the fourth quarter. They had a 12-0 run at one point to cut it from what was an 18-point deficit, and OKC led 112-106. And it was at this point in the game that it kind of felt like, okay, Rockets are here. They're making a push. They're making a run. Like, let's see what they can do. And unfortunately, right after that 12-0 run, OKC answered with their own 8-0 run. J-Dub got a transition bucket where Nobody picked him up in transition. He made it all the way pretty much coast to coast and finished at the rim with relative ease. And then Lu Dort, because of course, Lu Dort knocked down back-to-back triples. One of them just flat out contested, like hand in his face. No issue. And so OKC went on their own little 8-0 run to widen the lead back to 14. And it was at that point that Ime Udoka came back with, he subbed in Jock, or not Jock Landale, apologies. He subbed in Jack McVay for, I believe it was for Jabari Smith Jr. And that was literally Ime Udoka like waving the white flag, literally and figuratively, because Jock Landale, the embodiment of waving the white flag, unfortunately, for an NBA game. And that's not a disservice to Jack McVay. It's just, that's the reality of the situation. That was Ime Udoka signifying, hey, I'm not trying anymore. This guy hasn't played all game. I'm clearing my bench, so to speak, whatever. Jack McVay was the last guy on the bench to clear. And Jack McVay actually stepped in the game and knocked down a couple shots. He looked good, knocked down a couple corner threes, and he was part of the Rockets' run to continue to try and make this thing a game. And that was kind of the ridiculous thing to me, is I looked at this game and I thought, man, Ime gave up on this game way too soon. That was my immediate reaction, because the Rockets still had, like, if they had actually, and here's my frustration with this one, and maybe it wouldn't have mattered. Maybe the rest was more important for guys like Jalen, like Jabari. Fine. But here's where I have I take exception to this game. The Rockets showed a lot of fight, a lot of tenacity in this game, and they still managed, after that lead ballooned back out to 120-106, the Rockets still managed to cut back into the lead a couple different times. They cut it down to 7 points at one point. They cut it down to 8 points at another point. Like, they were very much still kind of in this game, but they were also running on fumes, was the problem. Like, Reed had played the whole fourth quarter at that point. N'Faly Dante had played I don't know how many minutes at that point. Like, Cam had played a ton of minutes. They were running on absolute fumes. And if Ime had actually treated this like a winnable game in the fourth quarter, if he had stuck with his substitution patterns, if he had gone back to Jalen Green rather than resting him the end of the game, if he had, gone back to Jabari Smith Jr., like, if he had done what he needed to do and stuck with the guys who were playing well in this game, right? Cam played phenomenal. Jalen played a strong game until he was sat for the rest of it. Reed, best game of his career. N'Faly Dante played amazing off the bench. Even Aaron Holiday, really strong game, 14 points, 5 of 8 shooting. If he had gone back to some of the guys that were playing well and stuck with this regular substitution pattern and kept his guys fresh for the close of this game, I think there's a very realistic outcome where the Rockets actually win this game. They completely caught the Thunder sleeping. They caught them by surprise. And look, it's SGA. It's the Thunder. Maybe they still find a way to close it out. Maybe they dominate the tail end of regulation and all this fuss is for nothing. But it really felt frustrating to see Ime Udoka throw away a game that his players fought so hard for and were actually in a position to win at the end of this one, despite a 50-piece from SGA. That's how well this team played in this game, at least on the offensive end of the court. And one more gripe before I move on, and I'll get off my high horse here. If you're going to punt the game anyways, then punt the game. If you're going to commit to punting a game, why is Jalen Green playing? Why is Jabari Smith Jr. playing? Like, why are these other key guys that are actually part of the rotation, why are they playing? If you wanted to punt this game, if it was a matter of needing the mandatory number of minimum bodies to suit up for an NBA game, I'm pretty sure it's like 7 or 8. So it's not like they needed a mandatory number of guys to be available. They could have just run the whole G League roster, right? And they didn't need to run Jalen or Jabari at all in this game. Maybe Jabari, I understand, because you want him to knock some of that rust off and continue to get back in rhythm. Fine. And he had a couple moments where he looked decent, taking it to Chet Holmgren and that kind of stuff. But overall, not a great game from Jabari. But for Jalen in particular, like, Jalen's a guy who's nursing so many little injuries, so many bumps and bruises. Literally, Jalen was bleeding from his knee at one point in this game, which, shout out to the officials who still refuse to give Jalen Green any level of benefit of the doubt on calls, driving to the basket, getting knocked down on three-pointers. It is absolutely maddening to watch the amount of contact that defenders get away with on Jalen Green on a night-to-night basis, and he doesn't ever get rewarded for it. It sucks. But this would have been a valuable rest game for Jalen. And I don't know. It seemed like they were trying to do both things. They were like, oh, well, we want to punt this game, but we're still going to play Jalen. And then at the end of the game, we're going to prioritize rest for Jalen after he got up 25 minutes of run against a brutal Thunder defense that was keying in on him all game long. And he still managed to put up 18 points, 6 boards, 4 assists, a couple steals, still had a strong performance, despite the fact that he was the only offensive option that the Thunder had to worry about stopping. I don't know. I'm going to get off my high horse now. But coming up, I do want to talk about the impact from Cam Whitmore, his defense in particular, and N'Faly Dante making a name for himself, showing that he has a little bit of something going on there. Some defensive intensity from him, some defensive impact from him, as well as we'll zoom out. We'll take a quick look at the Western Conference standings. And hey, the Rockets gave their final two-way spot to David Roddy after signing Nate Williams to a standard NBA contract. Was that a missed opportunity for another player that was out there and available to be signed? We're going to get to that in just one moment. First, today's episode is brought to you by OpenPhone. Look, running a small business means you're wearing a lot of different hats. Your personal phone becomes your business phone, and before you know it, you're juggling customer calls day and night. As your team grows, it becomes impossible to manage everything with just your personal number. That's where OpenPhone comes in. It's the #1 business phone system designed to help you keep your work and personal life separate. For just $15 a month, the cost of a few cups of coffee, you get complete transparency and visibility into everything happening with your business phone number. OpenPhone works through an app on your phone or computer and integrates with tools like HubSpot and hundreds of others. It also uses AI-powered call transcripts and summaries, so you'll have a rundown of your calls and action items the second that you hang up. And if you miss a call, absolutely no problem. Automated messages are sent directly to your customer, ensuring you never miss an opportunity to engage. Right now, OpenPhone is offering 20% off your first 6 months when you go to openphone.com/lockedonnba. That's OpenPhone, OpenPhone.com/lockedonnba for 20% off of 6 months. Openphone.com/lockedonnba. And if you have an existing number with another service, OpenPhone will port them over at no extra charge. And final segment here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast, home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. Look, maybe I'm overreacting a little bit. Shout out to my guy John. I'm trying not to overreact. Look, give me your thoughts. Did Ime punt this game? Like, obviously the Rockets were punting this game. Did Ime give up too soon in this game? Should he have gone back to Jalen Green? Should he have gone back to the other rotation guys that were working in this game? And should he have given them a fair shot to win it? Or did he give up too soon? I want your thoughts in the YouTube comments. But I was super impressed by Cam Whitmore's play in this game. 27 points, 10 of 19 shooting, 4 of 6 from downtown, 3 of 4 at the charity stripe, 11 rebounds. So another monster rebounding night for Cam. 3 assists, 2 steals, 3 blocked shots. Cam was everywhere, and he was getting it done on both ends. We know what he's capable of offensively. I don't even have to talk about like his offense. He was driving, he was getting downhill, he was knocking down shots. Cam was doing what he does on offense. Defensively, Cam was easily the best defender on SGA in this game. Cam was the only player on the Rockets roster with the necessary blend of size, speed, quickness, athleticism, determination, all of that to stop SGA. And I don't have the numbers in front of me. And I wish I did. I wish the NBA tracking data would update quickly enough, but it doesn't. But I'd be very curious to go back and look at the numbers. I would argue that a majority of SGA's 12 misses, because he only missed 12 times. 18 of 30 is just freaking ridiculous. God, SGA is literally the best offensive player in the NBA, or best offensive player the NBA has seen since James Harden. Period. Bar none. Since peak James Harden. Like, SGA is doing numbers like that this season. It's ridiculous. He also took the mantle of foul merchant from James Harden, but that's neither here nor there. Anyways, what is with OKC and raising the next generation of foul merchants? First it was Harden, now it's SGA. 10 years from now, it's going to be some kid that, some 7th grader that Sam Presti drafts down the line. I don't know. Whatever. Of SGA's 12 misses, I would argue that at least 5 or 6 of them came as a direct result of being guarded by Cam Whitmore. Cam did a really solid job of bodying up to SGA, forcing him into some tough contested middies, not biting on those little fakes and jabs and the shoulder dip into the up and under lean that SGA does that then draws fouls. Cam played a pretty disciplined game overall on SGA. The problem is Cam wasn't guarding SGA all the time. There were way too many possessions where the Rockets had Aaron Holiday or Reed Sheppard or Jason Tate or somebody else guarding SGA, and he was cooking everybody left, right, and center, except for Cam Whitmore. And that's what my eye test told me, and I'm guessing that the numbers back that up. I'd be funny if I was completely wrong on that, but at least eye test, I remember at least 3 or 4 different possessions where Cam forced a miss on SGA. Really impressed with his defense in this game, and then the offensive side of things to boot. This is what Cam can do. He's talented. He's got all the tools to be an incredibly successful player. He's just got to buy in. He's got to buy into what Ime Udoka is preaching, and he's got to be this locked in defensively at all times. It can't be when he feels like it. And if he does that, he should absolutely be a part of the Rockets rotation at some point moving forward. Elsewhere for the Rockets, N'Faly Dante, man. Holy crap. This is the vision. This is what the Rockets saw when they signed him to a 2-way contract in the first place. 10 points, 4 of 6 shooting. He was 2 of 3 at the free throw line, 9 rebounds, 4 of them coming on the offensive glass, had an assist in there, had a couple blocks. The most impressive block that N'Faly Dante had didn't even count because they whistled a foul beforehand. But N'Faly Dante, volleyball spiked the crap out of a shot at one point in this game. And the 2 blocks that he did record, he got them back-to-back on a transition defensive play, kind of saving that defensive possession. The Thunder wound up ultimately getting a 3 a little bit later in the possession after those back-to-back blocks because they recovered the ball. But still, just N'Faly Dante really making his presence felt. Thunder players were a little scared as the game went on to drive in on him, and they were settling for some longer kind of mid-range jumpers that they maybe normally wouldn't take if he wasn't in the game. So, and he caught a lob pass. He caught a monster lob pass. Where's my button? Steven Silas, where are you?
Lob threat.
There we go. He had a monster lob pass from Reed Sheppard. Just, screen, roll, Reed, perfectly placed lob over the top of the defense, and N'Faly Dante went and got it. So, really strong game from him in his first legitimate NBA minutes, scored the first bucket of his NBA career. I don't know what happened with the game ball, and obviously you don't really want a game ball from a loss, but who was more deserving of the game ball in this one? Reed Sheppard with his career high 25, or N'Faly Dante with his first ever career points in a 10-point, 9 rebound, 1 assist, 2 block performance? Who would be more deserving of the game ball in this one? Would it be Reed? Would it be N'Faly Dante? Or should they just take a knife and cut the basketball in half and give 1 half to each guy? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. But with that, I do want to take a quick zoom out and look at the lay of the land of the Western Conference very briefly here, because the Rockets are currently sitting a game back, a couple games. It's actually literally Lakers and 2. So it's Thunder, number 1. That's not changing. Lakers are 2, Denver Nuggets are 3, Memphis Grizzlies are 4, Rockets are 5. And in that order, Lakers have 21 losses, Denver Nuggets have 22 losses, Grizzlies with 23 losses, Rockets with 24 losses. Rockets are currently 4 games ahead of the Golden State Warriors in the loss column for that 6th seed. And when I tell you that mess from 6 through 10 in the West, by God, the Rockets have to do everything in their power to stay out of that mess, because that is a jumbled, just chaotic slate in the standings. It is a nightmare, and the Rockets do not want to be involved in that nightmare whatsoever. With that being said, the Rockets own the tiebreaker against the Grizzlies, and these games, right, losses like they had against the Kings, the disappointing loss to the Warriors just before the All-Star break, seeding is starting to matter big time. And that's why I think you're seeing the Rockets do some things like punting on this game against the Thunder, because they need to rack up every win that they feel like they can get between now and the end of the season. I still think home court advantage is a possibility. I still think it's on the table for the Rockets at this point. The Grizzlies are dealing with missing guys. John Morant's still out. Santi Aldama's missing time. Jaren Jackson Jr. is listed as day-to-day with an ankle injury. Desmond Bane recently missed some time. The Grizzlies could falter here a little bit due to some injuries. The Nuggets as well may ultimately walk away, and I don't know how much juice they have in the tank, right? We've seen it before where the Nuggets take their foot off the gas because they just don't, like, they've got a veteran-laden roster and maybe they're going to just prioritize rest ahead of the postseason. The Lakers are playing a lot better than I thought they were, honestly, post-All-Star break. I didn't think they had a functional enough roster around LeBron and Luka, but they're playing out of their mind right now. The Rockets should still be gunning for home court advantage. It's going to be tough, but they need to start taking care of business against the bad teams or the teams that are lower than them, lower seeded than them in the standings, for them to be able to walk away with home court advantage for the playoffs. A 4-5 matchup against the Grizzlies wouldn't be the absolute end of the world as far as standings are concerned. It would really suck if the Lakers or the Nuggets got slotted into that 4 seed and the Rockets were the away team going up against either LeBron and Luka or Jokic in their first playoff series ever. That would really suck. If you're asking me which outcome I prefer, all day, give me the Memphis Grizzlies, because I actually think they're going to struggle in the playoffs. Their identity is not going to translate to the playoffs. Game slows down. They're not going to be in transition as much, and their half-court offense is not great. So with that, I wanted to take a quick look at the standings as it relates to the Rockets. And last little tidbit we've got in this episode, the Rockets did sign David Roddy to that final two-way slot that opened up after moving Nate Williams over to a standard NBA deal. I'll be honest, not super pumped about the David Roddy signing. Look, there's a reason he's bounced around and been on what, 5 different NBA teams since being drafted already. Not sure what the Rockets are looking for out of David Roddy. Maybe it's simply just to fill a void on that two-way slot and to give the Vipers, another ball handler, what have you. But I will say, I think it's a pretty severely missed opportunity here that the Rockets didn't go get MarJon Beauchamp, who was waived. Who was he waived by? Was it the Clippers? Yeah, Clippers. There we go. Clippers waived Beauchamp, and Beauchamp was a guy that the Rockets were really high on back when he was drafted, and they were legitimately thinking about taking him if he had made it all the way down to the pick that ultimately became Ty Washington. And maybe this is much ado about nothing, whatever, and it's not going to matter, and Beauchamp isn't going to make it as an NBA player, and Roddy's not going to make it, and who cares? But when you're looking at little moves at the margins and stuff like that, like, I would have liked to see the Rockets pick up Beauchamp. I mean, he's always shown some great ability on the defensive side of the floor. Offensively, he's a little rough around the edges, but feels like he could have been, a prototypical Ime Udoka type player, getting after it defensively, making his name on that end of the court, and finding little spots here and there to be effective offensively. But it's a two-way slot. It's not like they missed out on, a transformational piece or anything like that. I just thought, man, I don't know. I'm not super jazzed about David Roddy. Maybe see if you can sell me on David Roddy. Like, if you're watching this episode, if you're listening, go to YouTube. If you're high on David Roddy, if you think it's a good pickup for the Rockets, sell me on them signing David Roddy to a two-way contract, because I'm kind of indifferent towards it at this point. But with all of that, that's going to do it for today's episode. Want your thoughts on everything that we talked about. Give me your reaction to Reed Sheppard's breakout game. Did the Rockets give up in this game against the Thunder too soon? Did Ime Udoka pull the plug and wave the white flag too early in this one? Talk about Cam's defense, N'Faly Dante's impact, all that good stuff. Let me know your thoughts in the YouTube comments. Remember, the best way to help us grow the show, listen every single day on a podcast platform of your choosing. Like and subscribe and comment on YouTube. Subscribe to the daily Locked On Rockets newsletter as well. But as always, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. And we look forward to having you back right here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball.